The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Yaron Brook Show on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. We're going to be talking about TikTok again. TikTok and Beethoven. What a combination. Never thought I'd say those two words in one sentence together, but here we are. That's what we're going to be discussing today. And of course, your Super Chat questions are welcome. Super Chat questions on the topic and Super Chat questions with more than $20 associated with them will get priority. All right. Let's see. We're going to start with TikTok. And, I'm tired of this topic. I'm sure you guys are tired of this topic. But there's news. There's news. Every day there's news. So the first news I saw this morning was that a judge had blocked the administration from banning the apps of both WeChat and TikTok. And that was done earlier today. So that applies to both WeChat and TikTok, the two apps that the administration had banned from being downloaded from app stores today. But then, later in the morning, we heard that Donald Trump had approved, the President of the United States himself had approved a deal for TikTok, whereby Oracle and Walmart will be purchasing 20% of TikTok USA, launching a new company, supposedly an American company, owned 80%, by the way, by ByteDance, the Chinese company. But that turns out the Chinese company is owned 40% by Americans. If you had the 40% that own ByteDance plus the 20% that own TikTok directly, it has a majority U.S. ownership, and that President Trump had approved the deal. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just want to point out a few of the absurdities that are associated with this. One, why is the President of the United States approving M&A deals? Why is the President of the United States determining the corporate structure of companies? Why is the President of the United States involved in such decisions? The only other example of this was Obama with the auto companies, and then he had assigned a whole group to deal with this, and that was a travesty and awful and a violation of rights and horrific. But why is the President of the United States in a position to approve or disapprove of a deal to purchase a company? I mean, this is supposed to be a country of laws, not of men. This is supposed to be something that we should have a due process system to decide whether TikTok is a national security threat, and if so, what to do about it, and that there should be some kind of objective process to do this by, not the decision-making of one guy who happens to be the president. It is nutty and absurd and insane and certainly statist. So here's this company, TikTok. And if you've ever been on TikTok, I haven't, but I guess it has short videos, and a lot of young people like this. And the accusation is that, there's a lot of personal information that is entered into this, and that information could be transferred to China. Okay, so sue them. Tell them they're violating privacy laws or restrictions, and create some way to block the information being transferred to China. But why is the President of the United States negotiating deals? Plus, I think he said that as part of this, TikTok will pay the U.S. government $5 billion. It turns out that what really is happening is that the assessment is that over the lifetime of this new company, they will pay taxes with $5 billion. But that's typical Trump. Mexico will pay for the wall that was never built, and TikTok will pay the U.S. government $5 billion. Yeah, in taxes, which they would have paid anyway. But here's some other information that I found really interesting. Why did Donald Trump, the President of the United States, or we could say the Central Planner in Chief of the United States, why did he turn down the deal with Microsoft and approve a deal with Oracle. Oracle and Walmart are teaming up together. Originally, the idea was Microsoft and Walmart were going to team up to do the deal, and they were negotiating, and Donald Trump said, no. Why Walmart? I'm sorry, why Oracle? Oracle is the big database company that also has servers. Why Oracle? Well, it turns out, and maybe this is a complete accident. Maybe this is just irrelevant. But the fact is that it turns out that a number of Oracle executives are quite close to Donald Trump. Indeed, the CEO, Safra Catz, served on Trump's 2016 transition team. And Oracle's executive chairman and founder of Oracle, Larry Ellison, one of the giants of Silicon Valley, is among the few tech leaders in Silicon Valley who support the president. And Larry Ellison has hosted a fundraiser for Trump at his estate in Rancho Mirage in California. So I wonder if Larry Ellison just called up his buddy Donald Trump and said, hey, can you do me a favor? Don't let Microsoft buy this. We'd like to be on the deal. And by the way, you wanted a U.S. company to buy it outright. Let us just buy 20% because, that's good enough. Do us a favor. Because none of this deal is consistent with what Donald Trump said he was going to do with TikTok. To me, this looks like cronyism up the wazoo. It looks corrupt completely. Right? You're worried about Biden's son sitting on boards of Ukrainian companies here right under our nose. Right under our nose. We're forcing a Chinese company to divest an asset, and we're letting that asset be bought by friends of the president. I don't know. Maybe it's irrelevant. Maybe it has nothing to do with anything. But it just seems weird. And again, Oracle and Walmart are only buying 20% of this entity. 80% will be still owned by a Chinese company that is supposed to be the devil. This is supposed to be all a national security threat to the United States. And nothing's being done about this national security threat to the United States. Why? Because Walmart's buying a percentage of it. Anyway, Walmart is saying, the same as Microsoft, by the way, said, that they will host all the data in Oracle facilities and secure it. Make sure it doesn't go anywhere that it's not supposed to go. Right? Oracle is lagging on cloud services. Remember, TikTok is huge, right? TikTok is massive. And the amount of, all this stuff is in the cloud. And the dominant players in the cloud services business are primarily Amazon. And then after Amazon, there's Google and Microsoft. Oracle is a pretty distant fourth. This will boost Oracle's presence in cloud computing, in cloud storage significantly. It'll give them a huge foot in that world. That is a growing world. Basically, all computing is going up into the cloud. And that's where Amazon makes most of its money. It doesn't make most of its money in what we use Amazon for, which is, what we know we use Amazon for, which is to buy stuff. The real source of Amazon's profitability is cloud services. And Oracle wants to compete. And therefore, Donald Trump has handed them this massive deal where they can compete and they can create. And this is, cronyism and corruption is all I can think of this deal. And of course, nothing's going to happen. Nobody's going to criticize it. Nobody's going to make a big deal out of it because nobody does. Nobody cares. These kind of things are ignored and accepted. And this is what happens when you have a mixed economy. And this is what happens when you have a president who some people pretend is a free market president, but acts like a complete crony, an utter crony. Yes, there was a big, I don't know, Trevor, if you're relating to, I'm not sure what Trevor's referring to. Jet A contract might have had I don't know what effect. Microsoft got a massive contract from the government to do cloud computing, and there was a lot of speculation that Microsoft got it over Amazon. A lot of speculation that the reason Microsoft got it and not Amazon is because Donald Trump hates Bezos, and this was to punish Bezos for owning the Washington Post, which criticizes Trump. That's how politics is done in Washington, D.C. today. Yeah. And not just today. Today it's just evident, and today it's out and open and no problem. Corruption has been around forever. Somebody's saying Billy Carter, Jimmy Carter's brother, got a big job in the 70s, which he had no corruption. Sure, I mean, this has been going on forever. But it's more and more evident, and it affects more and more decisions because that's the nature of the mixed economy, and it's more and more obvious. I don't think 20 years ago a president would have gotten involved in one deal like this. I don't think people would have asked the president to approve or not approve. This is a Donald Trump type of phenomenon. And it only gets worse from here, right? We don't go backwards, we only go forwards. That is, we go towards more corruption, more cronyism, more government involvement, more central planning, more industrial policy, which is what both Democrats and certain Republicans would like for this country. And Donald Trump is certainly part of that wing of the Republican Party that wants industrial policy and is engaged and promotes industrial policy. All right, so hopefully this ends the question of TikTok and we never have to talk about it again. That would be nice. WeChat still is up in the air what happens to them. WeChat is owned by, I think, the largest tech company in China, Tencent, and it's going to be interesting. I think they're going to put up a fight against the administration. They'll take them to court. It's going to be a legal battle. WeChat is much more of an essential piece of software than is TikTok, which is primarily for entertainment. WeChat is used by business to communicate with a Chinese counterpart. WeChat is used by a lot of people to communicate. I have WeChat, and I haven't used it in a long time. And that's how I used to communicate with kind of the pro-free market people that I knew in China. There was a whole group on WeChat, a number of groups on WeChat, where we would communicate about issues over WeChat that related to activism, publication of my books in China, and lectures, and just discuss issues regarding China and freedom, and so that's the context in which I know WeChat, and I've got WeChat on. That would become impossible if Donald Trump has his way and we ban WeChat from the United States, and then the means of communicating with people in China become much more limited and much more easy to monitor. So I guess there's Telegram and there's some other encrypted ways in which you can do it, and so on. All right, Jason asks, I'm just doing a quick super chat, and then we'll go then we'll go to Beethoven. Oh, yes, by the way, somebody says VPNs work. Yes, one of the big beneficiaries of a WeChat ban or a TikTok ban will be VPN services, virtual private networks. I have VPNs on my computers and my phones, and when I travel, I often use it, or when I access places that I'd rather not be monitored, like banks and things like that, I use VPNs. So VPNs allow you to access, quote, banned network, because you can pretend, in a sense, to be in China, you can pretend to be in Europe, or you can pretend to be in the United States if you're not, in order to access. That's how you get Facebook in China. That's how you get YouTube in China, is by using a VPN. So I would suggest, before they outlaw them, before the Trump administration or the Biden administration outlaw VPNs, I would suggest that everybody download one. I use ExpressVPN. I know the founder of ExpressVPN, but there are lots of VPNs out there. I highly recommend you download a VPN onto your phone and onto your computer. Set it up, even if you don't want to pay the fee right now, but just set it up so you have it, so that if they ever ban VPNs, you've at least got the software on your computer and you can use it. Jason also asks, can feelings be means of knowledge? For instance, when my philosophy professor told me there's no reality, I didn't know the right answer, but I had a feeling what they were saying was nonsense. So feelings are knowledge about your reaction, right? Feelings are knowledge about your reaction. So you reacted in a particular way, skepticism, right? And in that sense, you had another question. I see that now. Okay. And in that sense, the knowledge about you, right? And it tells you, ooh, I'm skeptical. And then you could say to yourself, I want it, because it's kind of the subconscious feeding you that. And then you can say, well, why am I skeptical? And now you can start analyzing it. So feelings can indicate a direction that your subconscious is putting you in, but they're not knowledge about the thing yet until you make it conscious, until you analyze it, and until you figure out what is actually going on. So they can give you an indication as to your super fast response to it. Now, often emotions are wrong, right? They give you the wrong indication. They tell you to be afraid when you shouldn't be afraid. They tell you to be cheerful when you shouldn't be cheerful, because you haven't had an opportunity to, in a sense, examine the knowledge, to evaluate the knowledge, to figure out whether the thing that you're responding to, the response is right or not, if the response is accurate or not. So the knowledge comes from your assessment. The feelings give an indication on how your automatic systems are responding to it. And that can be useful. Emotions are very useful, very useful. They're a survival mechanism. You can't really survive as a human being without them. They're just not cognition. They don't replace thinking. And they don't provide you with actual knowledge. Jason also asks, if you have never been exposed to objectivist ideas, how can one not end up a nihilist? Skepticism has to lead to nihilism. Well, it does, but you can resist it. That is, you can also say to yourself, I don't know. This can't be right. Hatred of existence can't be right. Wanting the world to burn can't be right. I do enjoy aspects of my life. There are things I love. There are things that are good. And you seek out values. So even without objectivism, not all people become nihilists, because they don't give in. They accept, if you will, an inconsistency maybe, but they don't give in because they realize something is wrong with giving in. Something is wrong with hatred of the good for being the good. We'll get to that with Beethoven. Something is wrong with nihilism. And they step back from the abyss, right? Even though they don't know what exactly is wrong and what the alternative is. They know enough, and life gives you enough information, and life gives you enough signals to suggest, for example, the fact that you can attain pleasure, and you can be successful, and you can get positive things in your life that you can pursue. There are positive values. There's enough there for you to know that you don't have to go for the abyss. You don't have to go for nihilism. And any healthy human being, in my view, when they have a tinge of nihilism or when they act nihilistically, the visceral response, the emotional response, if you will, should be overwhelming negativity, because it's anti-values, it's anti-life. And every signal that your body has, every signal that your mind has, that has anything that your mind has ever maybe done positive, ever, would be shouting back, no, this is wrong, this is not good. This is anti-values, therefore anti-life. So nihilism is not necessary if you don't have objectivism. Before there was objectivism, not everybody's a nihilist. Objectivism is a new philosophy. Quite the contrary. People were value-seeking throughout the 18th, 19th century, certainly. So, no, I think you have to have a certain psychology and a certain view of the world and a certain weakness as a person, as an individual, to get tempted by nihilism. Happy Avocado wants to ask a question in PayPal. It's going to be tough. Yes, why don't you do that? I'll open up. I'll open up my my email in another app, on my phone and keep track of it. So yes, you can do that. You can do that. you can do that through PayPal. All right. I want to talk about Beethoven, and please continue with these. And we're gonna actually listen to a couple of people talking about Beethoven, and their names. Let me find their names. This is a podcast. It's called. It's called Switching on Pop. It's a podcast produced in association with the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, and you'll see the irony. Irony is one way to think about it of that fact, and it's on Vox.com, and it's on. We'll see it here on Spotify, and the hosts of this are. Let's see, Charlie Hardings, who is a songwriter, and Nate Sloan, who is a musicologist. And what am I going to say? How am I going to introduce this? Anyway, they're doing a series about Beethoven's Fifth. I haven't listened to the first 2 episodes of the series. This is episode number 3. I'm going to skip to minute 18 because there's a lot of rambling and a lot of nonsense up until this point, and a lot of commercials which you're going to skip. There's about a 13-minute segment that we're going to listen to coming up, and the idea is here. They recognize the importance of Beethoven's Fifth, the passion, the beauty, and the symbolism of Beethoven's Fifth as overcoming obstacles, right? Beethoven's Fifth opens in this dire mood, this minor key, and it ends on a major key with uplifting and victory at the end of the symphony. They recognize that this is about overcoming adversity, and one could speculate that Beethoven at this time is going deaf. I don't know if you know the story of Beethoven, but it's an important story in the history of music. I mean, Beethoven is one of the great geniuses, in my view, of Western civilization, one of the greatest composers ever, and one who I love and really, truly enjoy. And Beethoven's Fifth is a great symphony in spite of the fact that it's been played a million times and popularized and trivialized, in my view, in many ways, and we'll talk about trivialization in a minute. It is one of the great works of Western civilization. It was one of the great works of art ever, and it's inspiring. And it's truly, I mean, to me, it's inspiring. Now, somebody says, didn't Leonard use this to prove malevolent universe? No, Ayn Rand mentioned Beethoven as having a malevolent universe premise, and I can understand that because the essence of Beethoven's music is struggle, and often the struggle is ultimately defeated. There's a defeat at the end of it. So, wait a second, let's see. Yeah, I have this, but it's going to be a while until we get to it, right? So we're going to do Beethoven, and then Happy Avocado will get to your questions. So I have it on my phone, and I'll get to it. So Rand viewed it as malevolent, and she did not like Beethoven, even though she recognized him as a genius and one of the great composers of all time. She personally didn't like him. I love Beethoven. This is one of my few disagreements with Ayn Rand. But again, we share the fact that he is great, even though she didn't like him. So here, they're talking about the cultural impact of Beethoven's Fifth. And it's not so much that they're attacking Beethoven as a human being, in terms of what he said or what he did or but what he represents and how he's been, from their perspective, used. Right? How he's being used. And I've got a lot to say about this, both because of the importance of Beethoven in the history of music, but also in the history of culture. I have an exact opposite view of these people. So if you want to hear a couple of woke, which symphony do you like better, the fifth or the ninth? I like the ninth better. I like the seventh better. So my favorites are the seventh and ninth, and then the fifth and the third, and then the sixth. So what you're going to experience now, what you're going to listen to, and I apologize for this, is a couple of, in my view, I said the seventh, right? Is a couple of woke, elitists who are riling against elitism. But this is anyway. I'm just going to play this now. We're going to start. They're going to start with a discussion of Mozart, and it's this isn't in and of itself. I'm including it because it's interesting. Again, this is more going to be about a little bit about the history of music and about the different way in which audiences listen to music in Mozart's era, and the way in which audiences listen to music in Beethoven's era. And they won't tell you why, and I will, and I think it's important, and I think it's important in the history of the Enlightenment. I think it's important in the history of Western culture. I think it's important in just the evolution of things. So I think it's good to understand. I mean, those of you who are interested, of course, and I'm not surprised there are not that many people live, because this is not going to be one of those shows that thousands of people listen to because it's not slamming the left enough. Although it is slamming the left, it's not slamming the left in politics. It's slamming the left in culture, which is less interesting. You have to talk about Mozart and Beethoven, and who wants to do that? Anyway, here we go. This is the switched on pop symphony, talking about Beethoven's Symphony Number 5, and this is 18 minutes into the podcast, and they are going to introduce you to Mr. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
I want to introduce someone you may have heard of.
Hallo, ich bin Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
I'll just say, just that voice is insulting. Just why is it necessary when you're talking about classical music, or when you're going to talk about somebody like Mozart, to infantilize it? Mozart was a child when he wrote much of his music, but why is he talking here like a retarded 5-year-old or 10-year-old? Again, this is the kind of thing people think is cool. This is the kind of thing people think is okay. And I guess they really like Mozart. They don't like Beethoven. But this is what they do to people they like. I can just imagine if they had Beethoven speaking.
You've been talking about Beethoven for like an hour, and you haven't mentioned me once.
What does Wolfgang have to do with this?
I asked Mozart to read us a letter to his dad, Leopold, in which he talks about the premiere of his Symphony Number 31 in Paris, because I think it tells us a lot about how classical music used to be before Beethoven.
You just called up Mozart.
I've got him on speed dial, NBD.
So what's the letter say?
Behold, the symphony began. Just in the middle of the first allegro, there was a passage which I felt sure must please. The audience was quite carried away, and there was a tremendous burst of applause. But as I knew when I wrote it what effect it would surely produce, I had introduced the passage again at the close. There were shouts of "Da capo! Da capo!"
Charlie, da capo means again. It's like people are yelling, play that again, right now, again.
Entschuldigung! I'm not finished.
Sorry, Wolfgang.
Achim. The Andante also found favor, but particularly the last allegro, because, having observed that all last as well as first allegros begin here with all the instruments playing together and generally in unison, I began mine with 2 violins only, followed instantly by a forte. The audience, as I expected, said hush at the soft beginning. And when they heard the forte, began at once to clap their hands. I was so happy that as soon as the symphony was over, I went off to the Palais Royal, where I had a large ice, said the rosary as I had vowed to do, and went home.
I asked Mozart to read this letter because I think it shows us that classical music before Beethoven was more like a rock show, right? There's people yelling.
Yeah.
There's people shushing each other. There's people bursting into applause in the middle of passages.
That would get you kicked out of a concert hall today.
So, somebody asked why help propagate such nonsense? Because I think there's an important point here. And the letter that Mozart read is a real letter. I mean, and it's real evidence about how concerts were played in the 18th century, in the pre-Beethoven era. And it's absolutely true. Audiences would yell, they would shout, they would talk, it was like a rock concert. And the only place where there was kind of, the audiences for classical music in those days was split into two. There was the aristocrats who paid primarily for the creation of this music and who had the music named after them and so on, where this music was played in hushed silence and where there was immense respect for the composers and the music, and in halls for the common people, where the music was not taken too seriously, where it was viewed more as entertainment, as a profound art, and where there was yelling, shouting, screaming, and mayhem, and where they behaved as they do at a rock concert. And by the way, to me, the audience behavior at a rock concert, and why that's appropriate, and the audience behavior at a classical music concert, the quiet and reverence that it has, reflect the seriousness by which each type of music should and is indeed taken. During the time of Mozart, music was not taken seriously. It was new. The idea of classical music, this kind of music, being played to common people was a new phenomenon. And it was not dealt with much seriousness. The music was viewed as frivolous. Just a fun time to be had. And it was background music. And if you've watched Amadeus, the movie, you see this in the movie. And there was just no seriousness about it. And indeed, while in this letter Mozart, celebrates the fact that they liked his concert, as far as I can tell, Mozart didn't enjoy the fact that they were talking while the music was playing. He didn't enjoy the fact that there was this unseriousness about his music. What Mozart had enjoyed people listening to his music in silence, fully, being affected by the music, fully being impacted by the emotions the music evoked. I'm sure you would have loved that. But that wasn't the reality in which he lived. And it's absolutely true, as they will suggest, that Beethoven represents a change. Beethoven is the first composer, and I've said this on past shows, but Beethoven is the first composer who really is functioning under, if you will, capitalism, or the birth of capitalism, the initial idea of capitalism. The rise of the bourgeoisie, the middle class, a rise of a people who love music, appreciate it, are non-aristocratic, and who are the first generation to be able to really go and appreciate it. The first generation who can buy musical notes. The first generation who can afford to buy pianos. The first generation who can actually participate for the first time in musical life. They can go and buy tickets and listen to serious music, something that was mostly relegated just to the aristocrats. And Beethoven, and this is, in my view, something to be massively celebrated. Suddenly, the middle class, first of all, there is a middle class, but suddenly large numbers of people can enjoy beautiful music, inspiring music, and enjoy it what I would consider properly, with the kind of reverence that it deserves. And concert halls started demanding that people be quiet, not because some elitist decided that that's the right way to watch the music, to listen to music, although that might be the case in some places, but primarily because people wanted to listen quietly to the music, because the music moved them. And noises distracted them. Yelling was a distraction. Now it happens that right now I'm listening to a book on audio on the life of Toscanini, Arturo Toscanini. Arturo Toscanini is considered one of the great conductors of all time, and he had a fascinating life, and I'll probably talk about him on a future show because of how fascinating a life he lived and how many different dimensions his life was fascinating. And he's one of my personal heroes because of the kind of life he lived and because of the stands he took, because primarily of his integrity. He was a man of unbelievable integrity. Anyway, one of the manifestations of that integrity is Toscanini, particularly early in his life. He was the main conductor of La Scala Orchestra at the early part of the 20th century, like 1903 to something, 1909. Then he went to the Metropolitan. He went to the Metropolitan Opera House in New York. And one of the things that Toscanini instituted as a standard in opera in Italy, and this was very difficult, was the idea of no encores for the singers. So what used to happen in opera, and I don't know how many of you have gone to opera, is if a singer sang a beautiful aria, the audience would clap and cheer and yell and demand that the singer sing it again. And Toscanini's view, which was consistent with people like Wagner and Mahler and other but non-Italian conductors and composers, and by the view consistent with the view of Verdi, the great conductor, the great composer, but who during his lifetime never really got to implement this. The idea was, no, wait a minute, stop. Opera is drama. Opera has a continuation. You don't stop an opera in the middle to clap or to cheer or to have arias sung over again. You have to view it as musical drama with a beginning, middle, and end, and you have to experience the whole thing in one flow. And that flow is significant. That flow is important. And Toscanini stuck with that, and he would refuse to stop and slow down. He would refuse to repeat it. And he changed the way Italian audiences listen to opera. And he had to fight them. He had to walk off the stage sometimes. He had to, show them the extent to which he hated it, hated what they were doing. And slowly, over many years, he re-educated Italian audiences. And Italians, this is hard. They're emotional people. They like to express themselves. He re-educated the Italian public in how to listen quietly and experience an opera from beginning to end as a work of art, as an theatrical, musical experience. Not as triviality. Not as you listen to a little tune and hey, it's a little tune, but as something deep and important. Even funny operas. There's musical comedy and it's got an arc. It flows. And to stop it in the middle breaks that flow, destroys that humor, destroys what's going on. And even the story itself is less important, of course, in music. It's the music that's important in music. And that continuity in the music is so crucial. The emotional states that the music evokes, the ability to move from one emotional state to another is interrupted by people standing up and yelling and screaming and shouting. And often they would do that. If Italians didn't like an opera, they would start yelling and calling it down. But what about the people in the audience who do like the opera? Why are you disturbing them? How is this not violating their rights? So theaters started having rules. And one of those rules was sit in silence. Don't disturb your neighbor. You might not like the piece. If you don't, get up and leave. But don't interrupt your neighbor from listening. Now, to me, this is just basic respect, but it's a recognition of how deep the music is, how significant the music is, how moving the music is, and how complex the music is. That you don't want to miss a segment. It's not about here's a pretty tune and there's a pretty tune and there's another pretty tune. It's not about 3-minute songs. It's about half an hour, maybe an hour of emotional, aesthetic engagement. And to do that, you have to be focused, you have to concentrate, you have to be quiet, you have to be really focused on the music and on your own emotions and on what it's evoking in you, rather than be distracted by chatter and by noises and by all kind of other stuff going on. It pisses me off to no end when people start talking or coughing or unwrapping candy or whatever during a time when I'm trying to focus on the music and suddenly you in the background. I mean, it's distracting. But these guys think it's the epitome of, I don't know, oppression. All right, let's keep listening. So I want to give you that sense of history. Classical music was not taken very seriously. People would yell, people would scream, people would shout, people would clap, people would cheer, people would boo. And then during Beethoven's time, it transitioned into something serious, something important, something that people took as important. And therefore, certain rules evolved on how to listen, particularly when you're with other people. You can do whatever the hell you want in your own home. All right, we'll keep listening.
Yes. In fact, if you go to an orchestra today, you might be required to read something called the Symphony Concert Etiquette Guide before you attend.
Now, this is a joke because I'm sure there is such a thing as a symphony etiquette guide. But how many of you read it before you went to a symphony concert? I've been going to concerts since I was early 20s, and I've never read the symphony etiquette guide, and I probably violate some of the principles in the etiquette guide. We'll get to some of them in a minute. But it's a straw man. And they have to put up the straw man so that they can knock down everything, including Beethoven.
Get out of here. Okay, what's in the etiquette guide?
It tells you what kind of clothes you should wear.
Jeans and tivas?
They say business attire.
Okay.
It directs you to unwrap your lozenges ahead of time.
Now, I have not worn business attire to the concert or to the opera ever. And maybe I have by accident, but now I've worn jeans. I've worn sandals. I wore short sleeve shirts. I wear a jacket when it's cold. I wear a sweater when it's cold. I wore T-shirts. This idea that you cannot go to the classical music, listen to classical music in clothes that are comfortable. Now, some people dress up. Oh, wait, that's fine. It's a sign of respect. It's a sign of a lot of things. Maybe it's a sign of second-handedness. I don't know. It's up to them. But why is this offending these guys? So think about, why are these guys doing this? What pisses them off?
Okay.
I didn't know that was a problem.
Unlike what Mozart...
So yes, I please, if you're bringing lozenges to the concert hall, please unwrap them beforehand, because that sound when you do it is really disturbing to like a lot of people around you. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with asking people not to disturb their neighbors?
Mozart described, it has very specific rules about clapping. It says, if you're listening to Beethoven's Symphony No. 9, which has 4 movements, it is appropriate to clap only after the last movement. You can look at your program book to find out how many movements a piece has. Usually there's a 15 to 30 second pause between movements. So in the case of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, you know you're hearing the finale after 3 pauses. If you're unsure, you can wait for the rest of the audience to clap before you join in.
Again, this is more of an issue of respect than anything else. This is more of an issue of getting the entire piece ready together before. Why is this so disturbing to them?
Oh my gosh. So if you're feeling moved, wait till the end of the 4th movement.
Yeah, because there are other people in the audience next to you. You're not alone. At home, as I do, you can stand up and conduct, you can yell, you can sing with the singers, you can applaud whenever you want. When you go to a movie theater, you don't applaud Every time a character says something you like, you don't talk on the phone. Why is that okay in the movies but not in a symphony orchestra? We'll get to that.
You can't have any emotive experience during this incredibly emotional roller coaster of a symphony.
Yeah, that last sentence
just
of this
can't
concert
express
that
it in
guy
a way that
says
disturbs your
so
neighbor.
much. It's like, to listen to this music, you have to know the rules, and you have to behave in a certain way. The Philharmonic's
It's worse than
percussionist,
control
Kyle
issues.
Zerna, told me that he wished the audiences gave more feedback, the way they did back in Mozart's day.
In a weird way, I kind of wish it was like that, typically, in an orchestra concert. Even if I felt it didn't go that well, usually we get a pretty decent applause at the end.
So there's this.
I don't think you'd actually want that, really. I mean, I think musicians, oh my God. You want people not to pay attention to what you're doing. You want people to be chatting. You want people to be on their phones. You want people to be engaged in all this other activity. Really? Really? Yes. You would get more spontaneous responses, but you would also get them completely ignoring you on times.
Radical shift that takes place within the concert hall. Is it because of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony? That's what I'm not understanding here.
Yeah,
I
connection
think
to
it's
Beethoven.
that the popularity of the Fifth Symphony introduces this new way of listening. So in the decades after the...
Now, he's not mentioning the fact that it's not only about the popularity of Beethoven's symphony. It's about, and this is what they don't want you to know, this is the knowledge that they are hiding from you. It's because classical music became, this kind of music, this serious music, this engaging music became popular during this period. Popular among the middle class and the working classes. Popular among people who now could afford to buy a ticket and go to these concerts. And who wanted to experience this. Who wanted this sense of reverence that this music can provide. And that's what they don't want you to know. They don't want you to quite fully appreciate the extent to which the 19th century changed our lives, not just materially, but also aesthetically. There's no accident that Beethoven comes when he does, and that the rest of the 19th century is so rich in music. It's because it is a post-Enlightenment era. It is because of capitalism, and the real source of this so-called depression in the concert hall is capitalism. It's because this is what customers demanded. But they hate that because they are snobs.
Premiere of the Fifth Symphony, if you went to the concert hall, you'd find that it was a vastly different space than the one that Mozart would have been used to.
Yeah.
It was a place where they used a word called Sitzfleisch.
I'm sorry, that one's not in my vocabulary.
That means like sitting flesh.
Oh.
And it's a weird word that describes how you are supposed to stay perfectly still in your seat. You're not supposed to tap your foot. You're not supposed to clap your hands. You're not even supposed to nod your head. You are supposed to sit in silent communion with this godlike composer. So what changed from Mozart to Beethoven? How did we get this rigid, rule-bound classical culture today?
Note again, rigid, rule-bound. Think about who hates rules, who hates rigidity, what attitude towards life hates any kind of rules, any kind of focus, any kind of rigidity in anything.
I asked our friend, the classical music critic James Bennett, why there are so many rules when you go to see classical music.
I think the best way to really think about that is the role that so-called genius plays in this discussion of elitism. It's almost as if we go to listen to this music in these quiet halls of like sanctified music. It's holy. It's almost like we're going to worship at the altars of these classical gods. And I can really not think of any other setting in which that kind of musical communion and reverence is expected.
What do they hate about this? What they hate about it is the genius. What they hate about it is that, yes, this is a worship of genius. This is a worship of greatness. This is about something holy in the secular sense. This is about reverence. This is about beauty and genius and holy and revered and about worshiping that. What is it that hates reverence, that hates genius, that hates the worship of genius? Well, it's certainly nihilism. It's a particular form of nihilism, although maybe all nihilism comes from this. But what are they trying to do? What are they trying, by knocking Beethoven down, what are they trying to do? What is the goal? What is the purpose? What is the philosophy that animates this? Well, the philosophy is egalitarianism. What they want us is to view all music as equal. Why should classical music be different than rock? Why should classical music be different than country? Why should we have reverence to Beethoven just because he was a genius? What they're really after is equality, egalitarianism. And we know that the only way to achieve equality, is to knock down genius, is to destroy the holy. Holy again in a secular term, to destroy that which deserves worship. It's to bring everything down to the level of everything else, of the most common, of the most base, of the most easy. Right? Why do they care? They care because they're about destroying. They care because they're about pulling down genius. They care because they're woke. And it's wrong to revere genius. It's wrong to feel a sense of awe when facing them, when facing greatness.
This is interesting. I like this comparison. The fact that we're even going to buildings made by famous architects.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that amazing that we're going to buildings built by famous architects to celebrate this great music and these geniuses and this wonderful, fantastic experience that we have when we go there? And when we go into the building, the acoustics are perfect. The acoustics are amazing. They're better than your best sound system at home. The acoustics is just out of this world. Isn't that stunning, the science that goes into creating that acoustics to make it that good? But no, they find this offensive. They want to tear this down because they are nihilistic egalitarians who just want to tear everything down and bring it down to the same level.
Almost religious-like. We're bowing down to these great intellects.
It's not about bowing down. It's about treating them with respect. It's not about groveling on your knees. It's about enjoying their genius.
Of art and music.
And like in religion, there's a certain set of rituals that you have to enact when you go to the classical concert hall.
They're not necessarily even obvious. There are all these unwritten rules where you have to go check the etiquette guide in order to follow along.
Again,
Exactly.
bullshit.
It's almost as if it's not just about appreciating the music. It's about showing whether you belong or not.
Whether you know how to listen the right way.
And James Bennett has some pretty strong feelings about those rules.
It doesn't make any sense. I would never want to go to someone's home and be like, we're going to go listen to this music. By the way, change your clothes, sit on your hands and don't get up to go to the bathroom. It's going to be be easy on the drinks before.
So by the way, if you're ever invited to my home to listen to classical music, I don't care what you wear as much. And I do care how much you drink before. And I do ask that you shut up, that you stay quiet, that you listen, that you don't distract me from enjoying the music. I don't like it when people talk over music or over a movie when I'm watching. I like to be fully immersed. I like to experience it fully. So, yeah, I would do this at home as well. Because that's what it means to revere something, That's what it means to take it seriously. That's what it means to fully immerse yourself in the experience. And by the way, if I go to a museum and I am looking at Michelangelo's David and you come next to me and start yapping, then beware. Now, I know when you go and see Michelangelo's David, there are a lot of other people around you, and I try to go during the day when there are very few people around me, and when they're making a lot of noise, it upsets me. I want to be with the sculpture, not with all these people. And luckily, in a concert hall, they keep them quiet, so I can focus, so I can concentrate. I love it. And I do that in my house when people come and watch a movie with me or listen to classical music with me.
And when you have all of this stuff together, everyone acting a certain way around the music as is expected, it's like, it seems like it's part of a club.
Yeah.
I feel James here.
A club of people
I love
appreciating the
going
music.
to see the orchestra. And yet, when I do, like, it throws my whole life out of order because it's the only place that I ever go that actually starts perfectly
so
on time. And if you're like 1 minute late, they throw you out.
Oh, wait, now he's complaining because
Like,
it starts on
I don't know what
time.
shoes to wear. I don't
He
know
doesn't have
what
shoes.
exactly I'm supposed to.
You can
do I
wear
wear a
anything you
jacket?
want.
I don't own a blazer. Do I need a blazer?
I haven't been to with a
never
blazer to a
feel
concert.
like I fit in.
It's
because
so
even though
dishonest.
I'm on my way slowly to middle age. I'm still like extremely young for this space. It feels so guarded by an older generation, and I'd never know if I even belong there.
Did he
Well,
just
make
call me
sure
old?
you unwrap your lozenges in advance, okay?
Please
I wanna
unwrap
know
your
what-
lozenges in advance. And did he commit ageism? I think he just committed ageism because he accused me of being old. No, wait.
And that became a problem.
I hear you, and I hear James. It's almost like there's two sides to the legacy of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. You know, on one hand, it's a symbol of overcoming and resilience and inspiration. And on the other hand,
Yeah,
it's
at
used
least I
to create
appreciate
this
that.
narrative that turns classical music into a culture of exclusivity and elitism.
What's wrong with exclusivity? And what's wrong with elitism? And aren't you, in a sense, exhibiting elitism here?
And there might be an even kind of
Yeah, here it
darker
is.
part of that
Here it
story,
is.
too, in which the symphony becomes the soundtrack for a new class of self-made white men.
White men. It's
It
about
becomes the marker of their belonging and their individuality.
What about women who like going to concerts?
And they use the symphony as a way to police who belongs to this caste and who doesn't. If you can understand this harmonic journey from C minor to C major, if you know how to behave in the concert hall, then you're welcome. And they're not so subtle about who is allowed in this symphony club
Really?
and who's.
I mean, anybody's allowed. Is there no, no something allowed? Right? What are you talking about? Just don't disturb your neighbors. The only real rule in a classical music concert is don't disturb your neighbor. And we'll see an example of that in a minute. By the way, I get into trouble when I go to
Remember
classical music
at the very beginning
concerts.
of
I'll
this
tell you that in a
episode,
minute.
we heard from that New York music lover writing in his diary about how this symphony is, the source of all freedom and joy and wisdom in the world.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that maybe later on in his diary entry, it is not the case that this is the place
Yeah,
for equality and
talk
every
about-
person to enjoy.
This is how he would have
Talking about
preferred
picking-
that the orchestra
Picking their
dealt with
quotes.
members of
Talk
the
about
opposite
creating
sex.
a straw man.
Quote, all women shall be gagged by officers duly licensed for the purpose before they're allowed to enter a concert room. If that won't answer, then there shall be a sentry with a ball cartridge stationed at due intervals about the room with instructions to shoot the first female that opens her mouth.
As
my
if
gosh.
And now
that
I
is
think
a
we can
common
see
attitude.
that this idea of like, oh, be quiet in the concert hall, it's not just about we need to appreciate the music. It's like we need to shut up the people who we don't want to be part of this world. And of course, it's not just women. Like nearly all other institutions, the symphony has been a site of outright segregation for Black Americans during the Jim Crow era.
that was 50 years ago.
And it's no surprise that black audiences continue to be excluded today, often in the name of written etiquette and unwritten cultural norms.
Let me call that bullshit. Minorities are not excluded from any symphony orchestra today. All they have to do is not disturb the proceedings. They can wear whatever they want. They can come wherever they want. I mean, really? We're almost done, so stick with us till the end. And I just want to show the full hypocrisy. It's the full evil of this.
These kinds
of, this
of
view.
aggressions are something
Almost
that
done.
James Bennett encounters as a black critic working in these spaces.
Oh, he's a black critic. Okay.
Like in a recent experience
How's that
he
relevant?
had while reviewing a classical concert.
I was taking notes, and during the end of the piece, when we're all applauding, the guy that I'm sitting next to leans over to me, and he's just kind of like, I enjoy the concert, but your taking notes is getting on my nerves, and it's disrespectful, and you should, be mindful about how I feel as I'm doing it. And I'm like, all right, man, like, what the? I was like, I'll try to write quieter and keep my elbow more tucked into my side, but like, there's not much more that I can like do about it. And then the ensemble does an encore. I'm still taking notes, obviously. He looks over to me. He's like, I don't understand what you don't get about me telling you to stop. And then he's like, who do you work for? Do you work for the Times? I'm going to call the Times up tomorrow and tell them to fire you. And I was like, okay, great, do it. This is wonderful. I did not and have not ever worked for the New York Times, so it was a futile chase for him. But like, yeah, I mean, it's stuff like that. It happens like all the time, and I don't want to say it rolls off of one's back or that, I don't care, but it's very revealing.
Yeah, what's revealing here is, what is the relevance of being black? Now, if somebody sat next to me and wrote all the time, and particularly if it was scratchy and it made a noise, I would comment on that. Now, I get into trouble all the time in concert halls. I'm not black, by the way, because I like to conduct. And I sometimes can't help myself, and my hand rises and I go like this while the music is playing and my head bobs and so on. And people tell me it distracts them. And I get it. I try to, I don't try too much because it's part of the experience. But I get it. And I'm white. And people offended by the fact that I conducted in Salzburg once. We attended, my wife and I attended the Verdi's Requiem. And it was a phenomenal performance of Verdi's Requiem with Daniel Barenboim conducting and everything. And we were like conducting all over. And the couple next to us, as soon as the concert ended, really were angry with us. I mean, really, really angry with us. And I'm white. Now, I'm Jewish, but I don't think they knew that. Maybe that was it. Maybe they can tell who are Jews and they're all racist, really. No, they're just used to sitting really, really quietly and stone-faced and listening to music. And they found what we did distracting, and I apologized to them. And I said, you should have nudged us during the performance. We would have stopped.
James's story kind of breaks my heart here.
It doesn't
and,
break my
even though
heart.
He wasn't
It's a
reviewing
stupid
Beethoven
story.
concert. What he's describing here is a culture that was created by Beethoven's legacy and the legacy of this piece. And it's a culture that tries to
It's a beautiful culture.
divide and exclude.
It's a culture that
even
embraces.
as the music,
Think about all the performers. Think about all the different nationalities from which performers on stage. Think of all the so-called color skins of people who perform. Think of the emotions that evoke, the universality of this music, the fact that this music is not just appealing to anyone. Think of the fact that classical music today is unbelievably popular in places like Japan and China and Africa. The orchestras in Africa and even some places in the Middle East, but in Asia and all over the world. This music is universally loved. Beethoven is universally loved. And yes, racism is horrible, but there's no racism here. Not anymore. Maybe there was. Certainly there was in the Jim Crow era. Certainly was in the 19th century. But let's celebrate the fact that it's gone. Let's celebrate. I think I did a show on the fact that I saw this performance of Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto in London with an Uzbekistani pianist. And how beautiful it was and how amazing he played. And he's Uzbekistan, Central Asia, probably raised Muslim. And look, he gets it. And he's performing it, and wow. I mean, the one thing classical music does, the one thing Beethoven does, is it demolishes barriers. It demolishes differences. It is a universal language. Music is a universal language in that sense. It moves all people, no matter what the color of their skin, no matter their backgrounds, no matter where they come from. And all we're asking for when you enter a concert hall is respect, appreciation, reverence, yes, for genius. Because there is such thing as genius. All right, almost done. Less than a minute.
Is all about resilience and overcoming.
It teaches me a lot about how the language of manners and etiquette is really often the language of exclusion.
Really?
It gives permission for all kinds of aggressions and microaggressions to persist
Aggressions and microaggressions, telling people they can't make noises while they're listening to music in a concert hall with other people.
in these spaces, to push people out, to not let them have
This is
their
why the
experience.
left is
and
so
in this
hated.
specific example, I think is particularly utterly absurd, because if we're there to enjoy the genius of a work, perhaps taking notes on it is a great way to get to understand and appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that brings up a really provocative question,
Listen to question.
which is, in 2020, are we still going to keep celebrating this composer? Or are we going to decide that maybe it's time that we break up with Beethoven once and for all?
There we go. We should give up on Beethoven because these sensitive people, they can't stand having to sit quietly for a performance. So episode 4, which is going to air in a few days, they will tell us whether they have decided to cancel Beethoven or not. I'm looking forward to that. I might have to have them on again to discuss that. I hope not. But anyway, I mean, it's just insanity. It's just, this is what the world has come to. Not even that Beethoven was a racist or that Beethoven did anything wrong, but that people supposedly in his name are demanding respect, reverence, quiet. No making noise. No making noise. All right, let's see. We got some super chat questions relevant. Music was banned in the sci-fi movie Equilibrium. The main character stumbles upon a hidden recording of Beethoven's Ninth and is quite overwhelmed by it. First time ever hearing music. Yeah, I mean, that would be something, and that would be quite a place to start. It is, Beethoven's Ninth is one of the great achievements of Western civilization, one of the great achievements of all civilization, and a highlight. And it is so moving, it is so dramatic, it is so powerful. By the way, before we go on, don't forget to like the show if you like it. I mean, the thumbs up. We got a couple of thumbs down, I guess, maybe by the people who blocked. Oh, wow, Troy, thank you. Thank you. Troy comes in at these moments and just blows up the super chat. Thank you. It's very generous. I was just going to say, feel free to support the show if you like it on super chat. Those of you in Facebook who would like to support the show, you can jump over to the super chat, to YouTube, to super chat, and support the show over there. You can also do it on PayPal, as my Israeli friend here did, by going to just paypal.me/Yaron Brook and just making a contribution there. If you want to make it a monthly contribution, you can do so on yaronbrookshow.com/support. You can do it on Patreon. You can do it in the Subscribe Star. And yes, as I've said before, since I'm not doing any public talks, since I'm not traveling to speak, this is my only source of revenue in terms of the intellectual activities that I do. So I appreciate it. If you value what I do, of course, if you would contribute to keeping me going and keeping me going on these intellectual activities. This is my income. So thank you, all of you who do provide support on whatever platform you provide it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Don't forget to subscribe. There's a bunch of you who haven't subscribed. Okay, we're over 100 likes. Thank you. That's great. Yaron, there was a great article in Wall Street Journal, weekend edition, Saturday, Sunday, September 12th, 13th, in the review section called What Beethoven Can Still Teach Us by Edward Rothstein. Would you consider reading and reviewing? Yeah, I'll look at that. I'm a huge Beethoven fan, and I think there's a lot Beethoven can teach us. And but the purpose of art is not pedagogical. The purpose of art is to enjoy the experience of it. So please, if you've never listened to Beethoven, go experience Beethoven. By the way, I mentioned Toscanini earlier. I will be talking more about Toscanini because he really is one of my heroes, and I think his story is worth telling. What I described about his commitment to, he was committed to excellence in music and was committed to excellence in conducting. Is committed to pursuing the composer's vision for the work and sticking to the composer's vision. And he was truly a magnificent conductor and a magnificent human being. Chris says, this show is great one you're on. Thanks for defending things worth defending against the onslaught of terrible cultural trends. Absolutely. I think this is, I like doing these shows. It saddens me a little bit that they're not viewed as much as when I do, I don't know, some political topics. So, but I'm not going to stop because I love these shows more than the political shows. So I encourage you all, if you've never listened, I mean, the recordings are old, but if you know a piece of music really, really well, go find a Toscanini performance of that piece of music. And it often, particularly in Beethoven, you will gain a whole new perspective on the piece of music by listening to Toscanini conducted. All right. Would you agree that these podcasters are functioning on emotionalism? To respect the music on the level you describe, one must respect and employ reason. Yes, they're functioning on their whims. They want to be able to yell out. I don't think they even would yell out, but they're nihilists, they're emotionalists, they're children. They've never grown up, and they want to be able to do whatever the hell they want to do, whenever the hell they want to do it. They're complete subjectivists in that sense. There's no proprietary. And there's no context. They just want, they feel, they emote, and they want to act out on those emotions. They went to some progressive, went to school, and there's some progressive place where they were told that their emotions were the most important thing in the world, and that's what needs to be cultivated, and they should be allowed to act them out. Their parents, probably protected them from all risk. This connects to my risk show, and anything bad happening to them, and they were just allowed to live their emotions without any consequences. And that's what they want. They want no consequences. And they want, at the same time, egalitarianism. They resent the fact that Beethoven was a genius. Right? Beethoven was a true genius. And they resent that. Frank writes that Toscanini knew Verdi and Puccini when he was a young cellist. Well, he knew Verdi as a conductor. I think he conducted the premiere of Falstaff, and he certainly conducted Othello while Verdi was alive, and Falstaff, and conducted many Verdi operas while Falstaff was alive. But just the story of his first conducting experience is worth telling. All right, I'll tell it now. So Toscanini was a young cellist. He was 19 years old, and he was with an orchestra touring South America. And I think this is in Buenos Aires. Maybe it was Rio de Janeiro. It was either in Buenos Aires or Rio de Janeiro, probably Rio. And it was a whole orchestra with a conductor, and the whole thing was touring. Came from Italy, and they were touring South America. And he was a cellist. He was a good cellist, and he was in the orchestra, and he was playing the cello. And in this one performance of Aida, which is by Verdi, the first conductor, I can't remember, he fell ill, and the second conductor was refused to conduct for a variety of reasons, or the audience was pissed off because the original conductor wasn't there, so they wouldn't let him conduct. And it was like, what are we going to do? We got a full house, orchestra, singers, everybody's here, and we're supposed to play, we're supposed to do Aida. And somebody said, hey, Toscanini, do you think you can do it? Because he was known to be a musical genius. And he said, sure. And he has this 19-year-old who's never conducted in his life, other than as maybe a student orchestra as a student. He gets up and he gets up and he conducts Aida. And what quiets the audience is when they suddenly realize that Toscanini is conducting this massive opera by Verdi from memory. The whole thing. Every part of every instrument, every singer, every note, every markings of the note is memorized. He didn't prepare for this. He didn't study for this. He didn't rehearse for this. He just got up and from memory conducted the entire opera. By the way, Toscanini conducted everything from memory. He never had to use the music. He had an unbelievable memory. He could listen, he could read a piece of music almost once and memorize it all, photographic memory. And he conducted from memory, and he conducted brilliantly from memory. Anyway, that was the beginning of his conducting career. He then conducted the orchestra the rest of South America trip, and then when he came back to Italy, he was hired as a conductor, ultimately landing up at La Scala and ultimately going to the United States, and in between managing to several times insulting Hitler on various levels, insulting Hitler, attacking Mussolini, being beaten up by fascist thugs, having to escape Italy, and landed up living in the United States, and just a heroic individual in his political stance, his stance against authoritarianism, and his commitment to music. If you just go read a little bit about his life and you'll be blown away. I'm reading this massive biography where they tell you basically everything he did every single day of his life, but you could just read a short version of it, and I'll talk about him again when I finish the book, because he's one of my favorite. Actually, my wife actually sculpted a bust of Toscanini, which we have in the home. We've got drawings of Toscanini, photographs of Toscanini. He's one of my favorite characters from the 20th century. The 19th and 20th century. So I actually did once an audiovisual show about Toscanini. Unfortunately, it was never videotaped. Is there any music you would consider great outside of classical? I don't know. It's not fair for me to do this. Partially because I'm not a musicologist. I'm no expert in music, so it would be pretentious of me to declare some music great and some music not. I certainly think, for me, and I think experts tend to agree with me that the most emotional depth, the most complexity, the most challenging and interesting music is classical music. But jazz is profoundly interesting and moving. I think some of the more complicated, complex rock is I don't think at that level, but okay, in a sense that it is. Something like Pink Floyd I think is beautiful, but I don't think it's anything like Beethoven. I don't think it's in the same category as Beethoven, but or Brahms or Wagner or Chopin or any of these things. So I think classical music does stand on its own. It is, I think, the greatest, but I can't prove that. Anything I say about music, I can't prove. Right? So I mean, metal. If you enjoy metal, that's great. But what I encourage you all to do as listeners is, as I've said many times, get a good sound system, get a good CD of a great piece of classical music, put it on, blast it to 11, close all the lights, lie down, and just focus on the music. And I think you'll discover that it is a kind of emotional, profound experience that I don't think you can get from heavy metal or from any other form of popular music. I just think it's unique. It's unique in its ability to go really, really deep. And because of its complexity. All right. I think emotionalism plays a role in the podcaster's reaction. Yes, I agree with that. They seem anxious to be expected to adhere to standards of behavior. Yes, they don't like standards of behavior. That's one of the things that characterizes subjectivism, nihilism. But even the nihilism comes in more when they talk about genius and how that offends them. Kind of, you get the sense that they're offended by the fact that they're geniuses. But it's the egalitarianism. They want everything to be the same. They don't want to be told something's better than something else. Some culture is better than others. They're multiculturalist. They are fundamentally, I haven't forgotten you, Happy Avocado. They're fundamentally egalitarian. They want to knock everything down to the same standard. Okay, one more question, and then I'll get to Happy Avocado. What is your view of today's generation current music? The dominant theme of rap, hip-hop, pop music. It's not looking for what has better aesthetic. However, Thank you, can't pronounce the name. However, 21st century brought us artistic like Billie Eilish and Drake Kane. I don't know Drake Kane and Billie Eilish. I'm not impressed with anything in the 21st century. It all sounds the same to me. It's all boring. It's all repetitive. It's all dulling. It's dulling of the mind. It's dulling of your emotion. It's based on a beat. All it is a beat. And then they do stuff around the beat. And this is true generally of pop and rock. It's all based on the most primitive of all musical forms, which is a drum beat. And music should be sophisticated, should be intricate, should have melodies that move you and change and jazz has that, and certainly classical music of course has that, and popular music just doesn't have it. It's just the repetition, and it's repetition of the most primitive of the hip hop, boom 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 boom. That's all it is. So I hate. I can't think of any 21st century music really that I love. I mean, there's certain things I like. I can listen to. I can listen to certain pop. I can listen to certain country. I can listen to certain singers. But I just, none of it is profound. None of it is moving. None of it is deep in any kind of sense. All right. Happy Avocado. Let's take a look at your question. It's somewhere here on there. How do you reconcile the fact that Wagner made such beautiful music and yet he had a terrible philosophy? Do you like Wagner's music? Thank you, Shanatava. Yeah, I mean, artists are not... Art is a product of your metaphysical value judgments, not of your explicit philosophy. And to explain that is hard. I highly recommend reading The Romantic Manifesto by Ayn Rand. You can have an explicit philosophy that's inconsistent with your metaphysical value judgments. Your metaphysical value judgments are the answers to the most basic, fundamental questions about reality and about your place in reality. Wagner's music has a lot, is passionate. It has a sense of importance. It has a sense of grandeur. It's why Wagner admired, at least, and why Nietzsche admired Wagner, because at least Nietzsche had an awful philosophy. But he had a sense of the heroic, a sense of the human potential. And that is reflected in Wagner's art. It's grand and big and full of big emotions and big struggles and big drama and life and death. And it's the importance. Life is important. Dealing with life is important. That's and that's what you get out of Wagner. And whether that's consistent, I mean, it could be consistent with your philosophy, and then you have bad philosophy on top of that. Right? But Wagner's music is phenomenal. It's complex, it's moving, it's dramatic. Wagner's contribution to what we call musical theater, to taking opera seriously and to making it into an integrated whole, an integration of acting, music, singing, drama, theater, the whole package is a great contribution. But the music itself is truly fantastic and truly important and truly wonderful. Sometimes a little long. I think Tristan and Isolde could have been a little shorter, but wow. The emotion Tristan evokes, truly. And again, it answers that question of what do you find important? Is life important to you? And Wagner says yes in his music. Even in his philosophy, ultimately, he says no. So most artists do not, I mean, Michelangelo is deeply religious, and yet he creates one of the greatest works of secular art ever in his David. Now, he's less religious when he does the David, but still. So it's, you can't just map somebody's philosophy onto his art. Because sometimes an artist doesn't know what his metaphysical value judgments are. It's many times subconscious and many times reflected in an art in his way that it's not reflected in his explicit sayings or in his explicit philosophy. All right. China is starting to be considered our enemy. Did Trump bring that about, or was it going to happen anyway? I think it was going to happen anyway. Certainly the Democrats have been advocating for this for a long time. And some on the right, like Bannon and others. Trump accelerated it. But China it was going to happen because China's turned authoritarian. I think the key event, and we can talk about this on another show about China, was the financial crisis, which I think turned China away from freedom, free markets, and towards more authoritarianism. Then they elected Xi as the supreme leader, which, the leader, not the supreme leader. He turned himself into supreme leader and turned China much more authoritarian than it had been. So the last 5 years, 6 years have been really disastrous for China. And as long as Xi was going to do that, they were going to become an enemy no matter what. Again, Trump just accelerated that. What do you think of the idea that middle-class office workers don't pay the full fair price for anything we buy, hurting the laborers? Is it Marxist? I don't know exactly what you mean, but I'm guessing that yes, that it is Marxist, that the idea is that all the work gets done by the laborer, and yet there is still profit, and there's middle management, and there's CEOs who don't make anything, because the only work gets done by the laborer. That's, in a sense, the labor theory of value. And therefore, they're exploiting the labor because whatever they get is taken from the value that the laborer created. And what they don't get is that the only reason the laborer can create the value, whatever value they create, is because of the existence of the middle-class office worker, the CEO, the capitalist financial markets, and everybody else. The worker cannot create that value independent of all of these other factors. So they have a complete lack of understanding, if they're honest, of the way production happens. A complete misunderstanding of the way economics happens, in a sense, the way production and economics happens. And, yeah. All right. All right, just a quick, we'll do a few quick Super Chat questions here, unless somebody wants to put in some real dollars for Super Chat question. Why do judges get complete immunity from lawsuits and police only get qualified immunity? The whole concept seems corrupt. I have to say I don't know. That's something we're thinking about and maybe asking somebody who knows something about the topic. I just don't know. I don't know what the immunity status of the different professions is and why, and what's the historical context for it. I know philosophy students who say there is no free will, so life is deterministic, and no one can be valued by their achievement. Because they're determinist. Is this deterministic mindset the root of the problem we see today? Yes, to a large extent, because you think about determinism is also what leads to racism of the left and of the right, because you are your genes, and therefore you're determined by your genes, and therefore your character is determined by your genes. And therefore, your character is determined by your ethnic background, which determines your genes. So yes, and the egalitarianism is, well, just because you can write beautiful music doesn't mean you deserve any particular, congratulations for that, because you didn't do it. It's just an accident of your genes. So yes, the determinism is a big factor in the egalitarianism, in the nihilism, and in the racism, in the tribalism that exists today in the world. And we have to overthrow this view of free will if we have any hope of achieving capitalism and freedom and respect for civilization. That we accept Jewish and Asian higher intelligence proves that WS is not the goal. I don't know what WS is. White supremacy is not the goal. Oh, this is the Sam Harris and Stephen Molyneux's supremacist in your view. Yes, I've said that. The bell curve argues against cognitive stratification. Good. I don't think Murray's a racist. I think Murray's confused, but I don't think Murray's a racist. And I don't think Sam Harris is a racist. I definitely think Stephen Molyneux is a racist. I don't think Sam Harris is. I think they're confused about the issue of intelligence. It's not too surprising. Do you have to bury your individuality when playing music in a collective like an orchestra? There's no room for improvisation in music. No. I mean, your individuality is being expressed by playing the piece to the best of your ability. That's what your individuality means. Taking this piece and playing it to the best of your ability. Do you bury your individuality when you write code in software because you're writing it in Python and you're following Python's rules, and you can't just write whatever the hell you feel like it. You write whatever, Individuality does not equal subjectivism. Individuality is you expressing yourself by doing the best job that you can do within the context of what it is you're doing. Music is not about just doing whatever the hell you feel like it. It's expressing yourself in performing some piece of music to the best of your ability. Improvisation is nice, but improvisation is almost by definition never going to be as good as actually thought out music. Because actually thought out music was thought out. It's planned. It has, what you do improvisationally might be okay, but it's never going to be quite as deep, quite as meaningful, quite as significant as something that is being written. But to actually take a piece of a genius like Beethoven and play it like he intended to its full power requires you to do something special. There's an actor, because he is doing what the script says and saying the words that the script determines and following the director's instructions, that he loses individuality by it. Don't conflate individuality with subjectivism. What is the difference between high and low art? It's the values at stake. It's the aesthetic quality of presentation of those values. So there is such a thing as aesthetic quality. And you have to be an expert in a particular field to know. So somebody who's an expert in literature can tell you, this has high aesthetic quality, this has low aesthetic quality. This is high art, this is low art. Right? So that's one criteria. It's just aesthetic quality. And then the second is, what values are at stake? What values are being projected? And that will determine whether it's high or low. But first is it has to be good by the standards of that particular aesthetic medium. Good by the standards of painting. Good by the standards of sculpture. And a aesthetician would have to determine what are the standards of good when it comes to painting. It's not whatever you feel like it. It's the standards based on reality, based on the function that painting serves in human life, based on the way we respond as human beings to painting, based on how universal what you're expressing is. Right? Somebody says Woody Allen is known, for example, to trust the actors. Yeah, I mean, some artists, some directors will let people improvise, just like they do in jazz. Some directors won't. Fritz Lang would not let anybody improvise every angle of every camera. I don't think Hitchcock let actors improvise. So it depends on the director. He's in charge. He's the boss, and he will tell you how to act. If he wants you to improvise, you improvise. If he doesn't, you won't. All right. I wanted to, what did I want to do? I wanted to recommend a movie, since we're talking about art. Yeah, I wanted to recommend a movie on HBO Max, for those of you who have HBO Max. It's called Ad Astra. Maybe some of you have seen it, Ad Astra, with Brad Pitt. And I thought the movie was really moving, really intense, dramatic. It had my full attention throughout. The theme is a bit Freudian. It's a psychological theme. It's about your relationship with your father and the hero's relationship with his father and how you have to, in a sense, let go of that and whatever. But I thought it was really well done. I thought Brad Pitt was excellent. But I really enjoyed it. That is, it had me completely focused. It had me completely immersed in the story, in the drama, in the action. Some of the action scene to it, particularly at the end, is a little absurd and ridiculous, and maybe contradicts even the laws of physics. But it was really an effective movie. Really an effective movie. So I would recommend it. And I would let me know what you think. Let me know if you enjoyed it. It's definitely one of the better movies I've seen, and primarily not because of the theme, but primarily because of how it was made. It just was really engrossing. It was really intense, and it took itself seriously. And again, the theme was so. But I thought the intensity was good. It almost played like a horror movie, but not a horror. I hate horror movies, but it wasn't a horror movie. It was a psychological drama, and I really enjoyed it. Anyway, Ad Astra was I really enjoyed. So I hope you enjoyed. All right, thanks everybody. I will see you again tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have a show. We'll probably get back to topics that generate more live viewership. But I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did enjoy it, and if you want more shows like this, one way to show me you enjoyed it is to like the show. Just press that like button. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. I think most of you watching this live are subscribers. But if you're not, please subscribe to the show. And of course, for the rest of you, one way you can show me that you like this particular show is use the super chat feature. Use some other feature to the applaud feature or the other one of the other features. Just put a couple of bucks to it. Put something to it that just shows me that yes, these are the kind of shows worth doing, so that I keep returning to. So I'm motivated to keep returning to them beyond just the fact that I love doing shows like this, which is really motivation enough. So thank you for those of you who use the super chat to support the show. That was excellent, and I will see you all. Last thing you can do is share. I don't emphasize that enough, but if your friends like classical music, if your friends would benefit from Beethoven and stuff like this, particularly when we split this up and we have a whole segment just on Beethoven, please share that, get it out there, get viewership of these things up, because it frustrates me that the positive shows, that the show's a little different. This wasn't really a positive show. It was anti-wokeness in the arts. But the shows that don't really deal with politics don't get as many views as the shows that deal with politics. The shows that are more positive get a lot fewer votes than the views than the shows that deal directly with politics. If I did another thing on white fragility, people would watch it like crazy. But if I do something about Beethoven, and that's sad. It makes me sad. So help me not be sad by sharing. All right, thanks everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.